Billionaire was driving and was shocked to see his 5-year-old daughter begging on the street. What he discovered next broke him. Hello, welcome and welcome back. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe for more uplifting stories. Now, sit tight, relax, and enjoy. Marcus Hale's armored sedan had barely eased into the circular drive when a sound drifted toward him that did not belong to the hush of his estate. A small keening noise like a bird with a broken wing. He had left the summit early, cutting a week from a string of boardroom dinners and press appearances because of a tightening he could not name. Fatherhood had become a sharp raw ache since Mara's funeral, and he had told himself a visit would soothe the ache. He opened the door as though footsteps might carry him straight to her. The sound came again, thin and pleading. There was a child at the iron fence. She knelt on the spare strip of grass between the sidewalk and the property line. One small hand threaded through the bars as if she could pull hope itself through metal and into her palms. The dress she wore was a fashion label. He recognized a brand Mara loved, but the fabric hung from her body that had been hollowed out. Ribs defined the curve of her torso. Cheeks were drawn into shadow. Her hair was matted with the smell of dust and something older. The little girl's voice when she asked was a thing too small for the space it occupied. Please, Senora Rosa, just a little bread. I promise I won't tell Martr. An older woman crouched on the sidewalk, lunchbox clutched like an offering. Tears forked down the woman's face. This cannot continue. Nina, where is the woman who is supposed to care for you? She whispered into the night, and those words landed on Marcus like a blow. The child turned. For a moment, his heart stopped. The face was the same soft curve Mara had left behind, the same freckle at the corner of one eye. Lily, he said before he could stop himself. He crossed the gravel like a man pulled by a chain, her legs buckled as she rose. Marcus caught her, lifted her into his arms, and felt nothing but the fragile weight of a life nearly lost. Daddy, the small voice asked, as though asking permission to believe. She was 5, the Lily he had kissed goodbye with gummy grins and sticky fingers only days before. Not this child, emaciated, hollow-eyed, lips cracked with the geography of hunger. The smell of neglect filled the space between them. The smell of rooms sealed shut for too long. Marcus pressed his face into the crown of her head and tasted salt and a terrifying negligence. Where is Martr? He demanded, naming the woman he had hired with the best references and the softest smile. The woman who had promised to hold Lily's hand through grief and who had billed him more than some small firms earned in a month. Lily's answers came in small, brittle pieces. Marta says, she says you left and you will never come back. She says crying makes you weak. She makes me sleep in a small dark room when I do. She gives me bread if I am quiet. She says, fat children are disgusting. Her face folded into a question. Daddy, sometimes there are strange men. Marta talks to them in another phone. They take your pretty things away. She says, rich people always lose. Marcus felt his mind cinch with a cold that was not entirely grief. The clarity was animal and surgical. The woman who had smiled her way into their home, who had recited credentials and quotes about child psychology and trauma, had used Lily as leverage. She had taken advantage of a widower's absence and a child's grief to empty rooms, to feed herself on the warmth that was not hers. For the first time since Mara's funeral, the world tilted into a focus he did not like. Not grief, not sorrow, a plan, a consequence followed by retribution. He did not call for law yet. Law was a blunt instrument. Marcus had learned how to apply pressure far more precisely. He called instead for a doctor, then for Jonah Park, his head of security, whose face on the other end of the line registered a fraction of the outrage Marcus felt. The ambulance arrived with the clinical efficiency weekday emergencies rarely required for billionaires. Doctors' hands were quick and sure. They lifted Lily into their care and took her away with machines and medicines, humming like new promises. At the hospital, the diagnosis read like medicine and accusation. Severe malnutrition, chronic dehydration, traces of sedatives in Lily's blood that could not belong to a child. She had lost nearly half her expected weight. The pediatrician's voice had drywall in it. Professional, appalled, unable to keep a tremor from surfacing when she said the word abuse. Someone administered benzodiazepines. Dr. Hale, no relation. A soft-spoken man with a surgical scar so small it might have been a knight's mistake, said when Marcus insisted on every result. This is not occasional negligence. This is conditioning, and there are signs of prolonged confinement. Marcus listened and cataloged the facts the way he had once cataloged algorithms and investments. Numbers were a language he understood without shame. Each test result became a node. Each node tied to an action. Lily was moved to a private ward under the watch of a nurse Marcus hired that night. She slept for the first time without the cage of a radiator's hiss, serving as lobby. Then Martr's message arrived smug, light as a thrown pebble. Mr. Hale, I heard you returned early. Lily had a dramatic spell, but I have everything under control. Children are dramatic when their parents are away. Let's speak tomorrow about a raise. My patience is limited. Marcus read it and felt his face become a mask. He could have answered in rage. He did not. He sent a single text. We will speak at noon. He then sent a different set of orders to Jonah. Get me everything on Martr's past employment, her bank accounts, travel, her phone records. Find her aliases. Trace every cent that deviated from payroll. Activate dormant cameras in the house. Pull what you can from cloud backups. He wanted a dossier that would do more than confirm he wanted mountains. They found mountains and they found valleys of uglier things. Martr was Martr only by convenience. Her passport carried other names. She had served other households before widows, wealthy men who had grieved, always a pattern of impeccable references, glowing testimonials, and years later families left rummaging for assets gone as if stolen by ghosts. Jonah's team uncovered accounts that glowed like bruises, transfers abroad, cash withdrawals that made no sense, and a pattern of expensive purchases and lavish posts on social media that narrated a life built on stolen luxuries. Yet, it was the small things that set Marcus's jaw: hidden video files on Martr's cloud account, thumbnails that showed small rooms, small figures suspended in fear. Someone had been recording. On the third night, Marcus returned to the house alone. The master suite, the room Mara had loved, the room that had become a map of absence, had a door unlocked. He pushed it open and found Marta on the bed, wearing one of Mara's evening coats, lips glossed, a glass of vintage red half empty on the nightstand. Jewelry he had thought missing lay like stage props across the pillows. Martr did not look up when he stepped in. She was too engaged in posting. The camera of her phone angled like a liar's witness. Marcus took photos silently. Martr did not notice. She spoke to her followers about new opportunities, about earning the life I deserved. She was brazen because she believed the world beyond the house was a screen. In her confidence, she had forgotten that some screens were mirrors and recorded everything. When Marcus left that night, he did not arrest. He stepped into strategy instead. An army of private investigators, a legal team that moved in the quiet cadence of shark circling, and a journalist who owed him a favor after a story he had helped expose 2 years prior. Martr or Martr's aliases had moved from city to city in 8 years. With each new employer, the story had been the same. Emotional widows, children with fragile attachments, funds that went missing after a few months. The team found other women connected by thin threads, messaging groups with code words. A private server that stored videos and client lists, transactions that suggested sales of stolen property, and worse, the sale of the footage itself. The footage Marcus felt bile when he watched the thumbnails, children crying, quiet, their tears monetized for buyers who wanted to watch misery. The pattern was not only theft or neglect. It was a microeconomy that traded on vulnerability. Martr's arrogance had been steady. She believed herself invulnerable because she had never been challenged by someone with resources precise enough to pierce the network's skin. Marcus decided publicly shaming her was a tactic. Systematically dismantling the entire operation was the war. He met with law enforcement quietly, threading his private findings to the points where state power could move. FBI liaison, Child Protective Services, district attorney contacts who'd once taken a payment and turned a blind eye. He wanted the sanction of institutions as well as the scalpel of public exposure. The confrontation was built like theater. Martr texted at noon the day of their meeting. Flippant and certain. I'll be there, Mr. Hale. We'll talk about terms. She strode into the house at 3, carrying the swagger of someone used to bargaining with widowers' grief. Cameras that Martr thought were dead blinked on. Claire Donovan on live rotation smiled at the lens with the kind of cold gentleness reporters practice when holding a story that terrifies the powerful. Alina's voice came through the room speakers with the cadence of carefully placed evidence. Martr's gaze snagged on the bank statements projected onto the wall, arrhythmic as the telltale drum of a guilty heart. Her face, so practiced at sympathy, flinched. A video played. Martr hissing at a small child beside a closed door. Her voice cruel. The child's plea swallowed by a shadow. More videos followed. Each a match struck against her denials. Men's voices in other clips negotiated prices under code names. A montage revealed luxury purchases paid for with stolen accounts, a yacht, hotel addresses, costly clothing. Dresses she wore that afternoon had been purchased with money siphoned from places she had worked. Panic bled into Martr like a stain. She reached for explanations tailored for sympathetic ears. "This is a mistake," she said. "It's edited. I only wanted to help families." Her posture was a contrived apology, but Marcus had seen the tracks long before pity could be mustered. Cameras captured every flinch. Claire's microphone told the world the facts with the authority of an anchor reading an indictment. The police took her in handcuffs that clicked like a verdict. The arrest was only the opening scene. Marcus's team had coordinated with multiple jurisdictions. Simultaneous raids took place in homes across 3 states. The private cloud that housed the tapes was seized. The private servers that had facilitated transactions and buyer accounts were subpoenaed. Men and women who thought themselves clever because they preyed on the wealthy sorrow watched as their phones were taken and their messages became evidence. The web was larger than Martr. It was a network and it unraveled one thread at a time. 2 weeks later, the court filings were a textbook of cruelty. Martr, whose true name they learned was Mariana Santo, faced charges that read like a litany: fraud, child endangerment, human trafficking, and conspiracy. Through it all, Lily recovered. The sedation traces scrubbed from her blood by time and care gave way to the child's quickness back. Her hair was detangled and washed. New cheeks came back with calories and kindness. She relearned how to sleep without fear. At night, Marcus would read to her in low voices that filled the house with small, careful rituals. He spoke about school and spider bites and Mara's laugh, and he built new constellations for them out of ordinary things. Lily's drawings became their scripture. Suns with many rays, 2 stick figures holding hands, and 1 picture that said in crooked letters, "Daddy comes back." But Marcus's justice could not stop at Martr. The servers had names tied to buyers and watchers, some of whom hid behind corporate shells and anonymous accounts in countries with opaque laws. Marcus smiled, a small and dangerous smile that had once toppled competitors and now toppled conspiracies. The work was not over. There were others who would always look for ways to profit from pain, but for now the house held a laughter that was stubborn and real. Outside, somewhere in the legal system, the last accounts were being closed. Inside, a man who had been broken learned the exact architecture of vengeance and the more difficult architecture of repair. He had discovered that the best revenge was not merely punishment, but building structures that made the same crime harder to commit and more likely to be found. Above all, he had promised Lily that she would never be invisible again. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe for more inspiring and emotional journeys. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We treasured every message from you. Until we return, stay kind, stay hopeful, and stay with us.